We'll be starting this section from chapter 27th verse, Gyan Chakshu section. We'll see how Krishna, Gyana Chakshu, Chakshu means to see through these eyes of knowledge. And Krishna will repeatedly request the listener to see everything is a combination of matter and spirit, see everybody equally, see that spirit is the non-doer, see that there is so much material variety which is originating from spiritual desires, and then that soul always remains trans. So many things Krishna will ask us to look at from the eyes of knowledge. So that's the section we'll be starting from today. 27th section, 27th verse onwards, 27 to 35. So let's go to the verse. This is 27, yes. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. So, Kshetra and Kshetragya. We already talked about these in detail. Krishna, Arjuna asked this question, who's Kshetra and who's Kshetragya? And Krishna has answered those, and now Krishna is saying that it's the combination of Kshetra and Kshetragya that is responsible for whatever you see out there, right? And as I mentioned the last time, this does not relate to any specific question Arjun was asking, right? So Krishna wants to emphasizing the fact that yes, there are so many things that will be attractive, that will be captivating to you, but they all are a combination of Kshetra and Kshetragya. Right? So this whole variety in this world that keeps us, mesmerized, is actually just a basic combination of Kshetra and Kshetragya. Right? So Krishna's goal in mentioning and talking about this section is so that we may become dispassionate about this material world. When we don't know what the details are, everything seems beautiful. Just like for a small child, a car might seem very amazing. Oh my God, see how the car is driving by itself. But for a grown-up, it's not, because the grown-up has got that knowledge. Right? So Krishna doesn't want us to be infatuated with this world. And when our infatuation goes away from this world, when we have looked at this knowledge by the vision that we get through reading Bhagavad Gita, through the fortified intelligence, then it becomes to an equal vision. Then it becomes equal vision. So Krishna will also talk about that, right? So I think Prabhupada, let's see what Prabhupada is saying. Okay. So there are three things. The matter and nature is eternally going on, combination affected by the Supreme Law. So three things, basically super soul, living entities, and the material nature are the ones that's making these things happen. And one who can see these three super soul, living entity, and material nature in their proper perspective actually sees through Gyan Chakshu, through the eyes of knowledge. So this is a prelude to what Krishna is going to talk about, the vision, seeing. (28) One who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understands that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees. This is the next level of the vision that Krishna is talking about. And this is how we should see it. And here the word used is Parameshwara. So in general, the word Parameshwaram, Param Ishwaram, is used for Krishna. Right? But here it's used for the super soul. This is right. So para, like param ishwaram, it doesn't necessarily always mean the Supreme Lord. It can also mean transcendental. So uh, the the problem that Arjun had in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita was that he was worried, how can he kill Bhishma and Drona, who are his seniors? Although they are in perishable bodies, they are imperishable. Right? That's what Krishna has explained to Arjun. And one who sees beyond these superficial differences is actually a seer. It's being highlighted by Krishna here. The super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and neither of them is destructible. Right? So soul and super soul, they're always existent. That person actually sees. So that was the crux of Arjun's problem, was that he didn't want to kill his own relatives. Right? So that's one of the um, that's one of the how do you say that? What am I saying? One of the results of imbibing knowledge is the capacity to go beyond the superficial biases and prejudices. Right? And there are so many misconceptions, emotionally induced misconceptions that we follow. So when we have this knowledge, then we have also the strength to go beyond these all these biases and preconceptions. Right? Sometimes we in this world we equate certain people with certain characteristics. Like for example, uh, if there's a Muslim, we'll always think, oh, this Muslim is we have that time mindset terrorist, right? But whatever gender or religion one is born, but they all are soul, right? We all have a commonality. Samam pashyati sapashyati is what Krishna is saying. Samam pashyati, we see them equally when we get this knowledge. Right? In devotees also, we have this challenge, that this uh, improper vision. Right? Sometimes we see, oh, this is my guru's disciple. Oh, this is not my guru's disciple. Sometimes I use my guru's greatness to prove my greatness. Right? So we have it in the devotee world also. These challenges are there where we are not seeing it in proper vision. Right? So the original purpose of Varnashrama was to provide a social arrangement, which would provide uh, like an extended family. Everybody would be a part of that family. But then we started creating differences, basis of identity, but then the whole purpose failed. That's why the Varnashrama system didn't work so well in India. It collapsed actually. It worked well, but it collapsed because we started creating differences. Uh, so not just the material world, but in the spiritual world also, we as devotees also sometimes create differences, which we should not, because all and everybody uh, is is uh, is like an extended family. And Mahaprabhu also said that kibe vipra kiba nyasi shudra kene naya. What was that verse? Let me see. I think it comes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, 8th canto. Sorry, not 8th canto, Madhya Leela, 8th chapter. So Mahaprabhu also hints on this. 8. Yeah, kibe vipra kibe nyasi shudra kene naya ye Krishna tattva veta se guru haya. That whatever, whether one is a Brahmana, sannyasi, or Shudra, regardless of what he is, uh, if he knows the science of Krishna, then there is no difference. So Prabhupada says, so this is very important to Krishna consciousness movement. So we don't judge on the basis of your uh, caste, gender, uh, or social status, and so forth. That's not the way to differentiate. Yes. And then Prabhupada says, after the destruction of the body, both the soul and super soul exist. and they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. And so what Prabhupada is telling us is that this combination of the soul and the super soul, it goes on according to the body I take. So the soul's misconception eventually leads into a body, and the super soul has to follow it. And Prabhupada is explaining that at some places you will notice that for this word, Parameshwara, the meaning is given as the individual soul, but somewhere it's interpreted as a super soul. But in either cases, they both are transcendental. So if you see that difference somewhere, it's nothing to be worried about. Haribol Prabhu.
I have a question. You might be going to answer it shortly, but right now, where my perspective is, you say that Arjuna had to see this understanding of that he's not going to really be killing his relatives because the spirit is eternal, right?
Yes.
Okay, that perspective is very important. I mean, I think that's really important, but why don't I see any hinting of that right now?
Hinting of it right now? What do you mean?
Of Arjuna. I mean, where do you see Arjuna's mentality in reference to his original situation, which you're bringing up right now?
So, well, see, in the 10th chapter, when
Okay.
you remember the 10th chapter, verse number 12 and 13, Arjuna has accepted what Krishna is telling him completely already. So all the other chapters that come in are more like Arjuna asking it on our behalf. Arjuna is already liberated after the 10th chapter.
And he knows that what you just said is already there, and it's understood already then.
Yes, it's already understood.
It's just that I didn't understand it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Prabhupada tells that to us in the, I think it's in the part of the purports, I forgot which one, but that Prabhupada tells us that Arjuna is now just asking questions for our benefit. He is fully realized. I think it comes right in the beginning of the 11th chapter. Let's look at it, Prabhu. That's a good point you bring out. I thought it was in the beginning of the 11th chapter. So he says, now as far as Arjuna is concerned, he says that his illusion is over. This means that Arjuna, this is the first verse of the 11th chapter. Arjuna no longer thinks of Krishna as a mere human being, but as the source of everything. He's very enlightened, and but now he's thinking that although he may accept Krishna as the source of everything, others may not. So in order to establish Krishna as divinity for all, he's requesting Krishna in this chapter to show his universal form. So Prabhupada is telling us his illusion is already over. He's already clear now what he's supposed to do. That's already done. And the verse that I was referring to, 10th chapter, is 12 and 13. Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. Purusha Shashvatam Divyam, Adi Devam Ajam Vibhu. Oh, yeah, I'll just come to that verse. I wanted to show you that verse also.
Yeah, I really like that, because when I realized he got his head together, that was fine. But I didn't put it all together, what you just said, that, you know, his predicament in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita was over at chapter 10.
Yeah.
In reference to that. And now this is just a progressive intensifying of that vision, understanding.
Yes. Yeah. So this was the verse from 12:13. So here says, Arjuna is saying, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are eternal, transcendental, original person, unborn, greatest. All the great sages, Narada, Sita, Devla, and Vyasa, confirm this truth about you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. So here, Arjun, after hearing the essential 4 verses of Bhagavad Gita, became completely free from all doubts and accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's already done. He's free from all doubts here. 10.8 to 11. That's why that's called the Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita. Because after that, Arjun was clear. But then he also understands that not everybody will be on that stage because it's Kali Yuga. People are going downhill anyways. So I should elaborate, or at least serve Krishna in elaborating the Bhagavad Gita more. So, yes, bro.
Yeah, that's really nice of them. Because I was spaced out there. and as we progress about this original point. So this is I think that's critical for us.
Yes.
Not to forget why was the Bhagavad Gita spoken? What was it to clear up here?
Mhm.
So thank you very much.
And one more thing that I might have mentioned it when I was um, talking about this verse. Here in this 10.11, 12, and 13, this verse is very relevant for all of us from a practitioner perspective. Because what we are seeing here is that Arjun's faith has been solidified by how many three different things that he's mentioned. He's saying divine revelation, that Krishna, you are also speaking it. There is saintly people who have spoken it also. So there has been repetition from saintly people, Asita, Devla, Vyasa. And then lastly, he has his own personal realization. So the faith building in all the process of bhakti, it happens by repetition. When our mind starts accepting something, we keep telling it again and again. So Arjun's faith was nourished by the revelation that was coming from Krishna, by the revelation by great teachers like Vyasa and so forth, and the realization that he got by himself by applying or by thinking about those teachings in his life. So this was the trajectory of the faith growth in Arjun's life, right? So that's also something to understand here, that our faith strengthens when we hear from others, when we repeat it, when we you know introspect on it. Because that's another aspect that can be related to what we are discussing now.
Well, today, for the last since we started this chapter, I have this thing where audio books, so I can't control it. So I have to start from the beginning every time, and I just listen to as far as I get, and then I'll start all over wherever I am. Well, I must have listened to this 15, 20 times, but that first introduction there's so many points. It's like there's a statement made, then there's a statement made, then there's a statement made. And if you don't capture each statement, by the time they get to the fifth statement, you sort of hear it, but you don't have it digested. Well, I've heard it so many times. It's like, oh, I know what you're saying now. I know what you're saying now. And each step is getting deeper and more relative. So like you just pointed out, it's so important for us to keep reading it and trying to digest it and keep hearing it. I didn't even know, but by just hearing it now, I could almost give verbatim that first and second purports that Prabhupada separates everything. So, like you say, this is getting technical. It's super technical, but the technical is dismissed now, and I'm going through that. The fog is lifted in reference to that. So that the ability to digest and to realize it is through that repetition, like you just said. It's so important. If you don't get it, you better keep repeating it till you do get it, because this is not so complex that we're not supposed to get it either. So there has to be different processes of realization to enter into this message. And that's what you've obviously been teaching it and studying it and imbibing it. And so you're able to transmit it with a collective perspective, and you can go back to different chapters even and just bring it to the point, which is I'm nowhere near that. But what happens, it helps me see that this conversation is so nicely relative and digestible, though. It is,
yes,
isn't it?
It is, yes, bro.
Okay, thank you, though. This is amazing.
The knowledge is not of much value if we cannot practice it, if we cannot bring it into our day-to-day lives. All this philosophy is amazing, it's beautiful, but if I'm not able to apply it into my life, what's the use of it? Yes, spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjun, the best archer, a very intelligent. I have to bring it into my life to apply it. That's where the spiritual progress happens. Knowledge and practice, practice, that keeps going on. And we keep ourselves open, vulnerable, that yes, I don't know everything. Mahatma Prabhu, he says this statement that there are the words that block all mercy in the world, what is it? I know everything. We see that so many times. I see that when we go distributing books, people say, oh, no, I know it already. That just blocks all the knowledge. So knowledge and practice, we should always be open for that. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay.
Thank
so
you,
that was
Haribol.
Haribol, Prabhu. 28, 29. And as I highlighted the last time, you'll keep seeing that the word seeing is coming again and again, again and again. And this seeing is not the conventional seeing that Krishna is talking about. He's talking about the transcendental vision. Or a transcendentalist, how does a transcendentalist see? So Krishna just mentioned that the transcendentalist knows that this world is just a combination of everything. Then the transcendentalist sees the soul and super soul accompanying every body. So that's the vision of a transcendentalist. So this is the 29th verse now. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere, in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. So now what we are being told, this is which verse again? 29. The 29th verse, it's being soul is degraded by the mind. That's what Krishna is telling us. And that when does that happen? When we have material vision. Okay. In a perfect spiritual world, we would want to see everything as an opportunity for our spiritual advancement. Huh? Everything that happens to me is Krishna's benevolent plan to bring me closer to his lotus feet. That would be a perfect situation to be in. But then, by the influence of the mind, I get degraded. And then I start responding in a different tone according to the whatever situation I am in. Right? So anukulasya sankalpa pratikulasya varjana. So we have to, in bhakti also, we have to have this set of things that we need to give up or stay away from, so that our mind does not get, the soul does not get degraded. Right? So we have to just see everything as what is anukul for bhakti, what is appropriate for bhakti. Right? So sometimes, at least my vision is so is very clouded. Okay, I don't know what the person is thinking or what the person is doing. Right? So somebody might be acting in like, for example, Parikshit Maharaj. He took the cursing as an arrangement of the Lord. Vidura, when Vidur was cursed by Duryodhan, there were bad words spoken to him. He just took this as an opportunity to leave the palace and go out for to different pilgrimage sites. Right? So there was a devotional reinterpretation of the event. So we always look for what is the lesson in the situation. Otherwise, our soul gets degraded by the mind if we start interpreting it from a material perspective. Prabhupada calls it a destructive mentality. And he therefore gradually advances to the spiritual world. The mind is generally addicted to sense-gratifying process, but when the mind turns to the super soul, one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding. So to move forward in this world, in the spiritual path, we also have to not let the negative degrade us, our mind degrade us. That's what Krishna is saying, that super soul equally present everywhere and everybody does not degrade himself by his mind. Yeah. The reason in India we personalize everything, you must have noticed that. The rivers have a name, rivers have a more like a deity form, trees are personalized, the trees also are sometimes deities. The reason is that when we personalize somebody or something, then we have a relationship with them. Then I don't let my mind use them as a resource. Unfortunately, the colonial world, when the colonial mindset was that everything is a resource. So, but in India, that's not the way. So that helps us keep our mind in control. I don't see anybody as a resource. In the Western world, women are objectified. I'm not saying in India. In India also the culture is going bad, but in the olden days, women were, they say, I remember many times I met people who say that, oh, Bhagavad Gita has a very wrong view about women. It's not a wrong view. Women were treated like a precious jewel, right? That is why they were protected. Okay, not because they were weak. So that's the degradation of the mind that happens. Where in this world now, in the world now, women are objectified. They are so then that automatically degrades my mind. So under the control of lust, we start objectifying everything. Or that these trees out there, they are resources for us. Land is a resource for us. So everything becomes a resource if it's not a personal relationship to them. So that is why it's really helpful when we personalize. That is why we can have a relationship with Krishna. He's a personal God. But then it's very easy for my mind to trick me if there is no personalization. So everything in the spiritual arena is for my spiritual growth. Everything we do in that. So we don't degrade ourselves because of the mind. So we do many things to protect ourselves from that also. Okay? We don't want. Yes, Prabhu.
Well, okay, if you could just stop for a second.
Yes,
What happened to me? I'm like Pariksit or any of them. Something happened that I came into the material world in a human form right now. So what's going on? Well, the only perspective I had is what I get off TV and nonsense. But now hearing you speaking, oh, this is a perfect arrangement by the Lord for me to wake up. And he put me in this position, and all these activities that are happening are just nothing but a progressive march on the spiritual journey. If you can keep that perspective and what you're trying to do right now, illuminate that. What is it doing? It's by that illumination we could extricate and then be what? Captivated. It says on into the Bhagavad Gita later. It's Krishna uses extricate and captivate. But how that can that happen except what you just said? And then I just realized when you said, "Oh my God, that's me." I mean, I got all this whole trip that we're talking about. I can either see it as a nightmare and what the heck, because doing it from a material perspective, even realizing the trees and everything, that's all due to a lack of transcendental understanding. So it's a perverted reflection. But that has to be changed, like you're saying. And India has had the edge because since eternality, it did have that perspective, and then it changed as time went on. But the names of the rivers didn't change, but the perspective changed. So I mean, we're all like that right now. We got the mercy of Pariksit Maharaj because we're getting the association that we need to extricate, isn't it?
Yeah, that you need. Yes, you're right, bro.
Yeah, thank you. Haribol.
Haribol, bro. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So Bhagavad Gita is clearly asking us, the readers, to decide where we want to go. Because Krishna has told us that we all are self-directing. Right? Sometimes we accept the momentum coming to us from our previous lives, previous activities, culture we come from. But Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling us, try to see the bigger picture. Where did you come from? And where are you going to go when you leave this world? Be aware that we are self-directing and we don't get pushed by the previous momentums or by the wrong ideas. Right? And here we are clearly being told that how the mind, when the mind is pushed by urges, that's problematic. That time the soul is bound. Okay? But when we deliberately engage our minds in rising above those urges, when we realize we are not this body, but we have a spiritual goal, then the mind becomes free. It's no more a burden on the soul. It's no more degrading the soul. So that's something very, valuable coming from Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna is pointing out that, Premnam, you're self-directed. You can direct yourself in whichever direction you want. We'll read the next chapter, 14th chapter, somewhere in the middle. I think it's the 18th verse. Krishna says, Urdhvam gachanti satvastha, madhye tishtanti rajasa, jaganya gura vittisa, yato tishtanti tamasa. That you can go whichever direction you want. You are self-directing. You degrade your mind, you go to become tamasic. You become passionate, your mind makes you stay where you are. You become calm and peaceful, then you go upwards. Sattva. So that's what Krishna is highlighting, that we should learn to not let the mind degrade us. Then we will approach the transcendental destination, Paramgati. Yeah. 30. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Okay. So we're saying, okay. Yeah, so the Atma is not the doer. The individual soul is not the doer. This verse is similar to the verse we read in the 3rd chapter, Prakriti Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvasha Ahankara Vimudatma Karta Hamiti Manyate. That I, as the spirit soul, I get bewildered by my ego, and then I start thinking that I am the doer of activities. But here Krishna is clearly telling the opposite. No, soul, you're not the doer. Who's the doer? The body, which is created by material nature. So it's kind of an opposite to what we read. So material nature is the doer of things, and the soul is not the doer. It's just that the soul, when it gets degraded by the mind, influenced by the mind, then it actually starts thinking out of ahankar that he or she is the doer. So here Krishna is interestingly saying that the material nature is the doer. He's not saying that I am the doer, right? Because this section is for jnanis. It's it's a knowledge, right? Yoga of knowledge. So here Krishna is telling that he's giving the jnani vision. So that's why he's not saying that I am the doer, kind of something. Okay. So let's see what Prabhupada is saying something. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activity. One who has such a vision is actually a seer. Yeah. There is a huge difference between material and spiritual nature. And to the extent we can recognize that, to that extent I will make advancement. And to the same extent, I'll be able to avoid karmic entanglement. So anything we want to achieve, in any way we want to improve, as I was saying, it starts from knowledge. It has two elements, knowledge and practice. If we have sufficient knowledge and we apply it, that makes us, self-determining or self-directing, as I was saying earlier. Even after speaking the whole Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says to Arjuna, Vimrashata daseshena yathi ichhasi tatha kuru. He says Vimrashatar. So the word Vimrasha means deliberate. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you deliberate and then Yathi Ichhasi Tatha Kuru. Do as you like. So deliberate on this fully. The deliberation means you thoroughly consider it. We are aware of the consequence. So with that deliberation, then we take action. So then you'll be able to progress on the spiritual path. Deliberation. Yeah. 31. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman concept. This is 31. Yes, so he attains to the Brahman. So see beyond the diversity of matter and the constant presence of the super soul everywhere. So he's saying, Yada Bhuta Prathak Bhavam. There are many different bhavas. All the living entities have their different natures. There are many different bhavas. He's saying that Ekhastam Anupashyati. But they are one. So how are they one? They all are spirit. Brahma Sampadayat, say Brahma Sampadyate Tada. Then one has attained the Brahman situation, the Brahman platform. Right. So we can think of the example of the sun, right? There are many pots. There's a reflection of the sun coming in all those pots. So there is one super soul, right? From him, all the other soul and material and spiritual energies have expanded. So there's a lot of variety that Krishna is saying. So there's an expansion, Vistaram. Vistaram, it's an expansion. A lot of varieties, there's an expansion. So there's always this concept of oneness and difference. Achinta bhava. Yeah, so the concept of having simultaneously one and different, and there is some amount of inconceivability to it, right? But so Krishna is that way.
Haribo.
Haribol, Prabhu.
Okay. The last thing you were just saying in the other purport there is it was saying how I'm trying to capsulize what you're putting together here. And so we have the body, all these things are going down all the time. Now I'm the spirit soul, and I really want things to be a little different now that I woke up to the spiritual aspect of things. But it seems that things keep on going down. And so that's because of my past activities and desires that created this body, and the body has to function in reference to those previous desires. So I see things going on, and sometimes I just wonder, why is it like that? Why is it like that? And so you're trying to say that the spirit has to step away or outside that. With those things going on, he has to have a different perspective of those things as they go on and not be disrupted, correct? Is that right?
Sorry, I didn't get you, Prabhu. Can you please repeat your statement?
Okay. The body is given according to one's past desires. Okay?
Yeah.
To fulfill desires, he's given that body, but with which he acts accordingly. So that body, it seems like things are going on, even though I'm trapped in the body right now. I got this body. I know now I woke up, but I got myself a nightmare. I got myself into a nightmare. I got this body going on. So somehow it's trying to say, right, practically speaking, the body is being designed by the Lord to fulfill the desires. Because the desires he put in difficult circumstances. Okay, so then you're just saying that but when due to different material bodies, he attains the Brahman conceptions. As he ceases to see different identities. In other words, when you start understanding the next point, you start seeing that, there is no real differences. It's just the bodies are acting on a plane of capacity according to that entity's form. So what are you saying when it means the Brahman, he he attains to the Brahman conception. Thus he sees beings as expanded everywhere. The Brahman, what does the Brahman word mean there? Is that?
So the Brahman is meaning here is the vision of equality, of vision of the word Prabhupada has used here, Brahma, absolute. Understanding that the source is one, right? So different bodies, but the super soul is one. That's what Brahman conception means when we start looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, because when it's broken, yes, when it's broken down, like you said. So now when it's broken down, I'm trying to get the perspective of it being, how is it when it's broken down? Because before I just saw it as a big quagmire and a nightmare, and that's a dog, and that's a cat, and that's the body. There's no soul in it. It's just something that's going on, and that's my only identity I have. Now I'm seeing there's something really more complex behind every form and everything. And so when you get to the position of separation, now it's saying see different identities due to material bodies and sees how things are expanded everywhere. He sees to see that it's all just a bunch of animals. So the Brahman conception is the spiritual energy that's common in everything.
Yeah, yes, that's right. That's the Brahman vision.
Okay. Well, it's amazing the depth of the repetition again of something that we already know. We're knowing this, but now we're getting fortified with more, with this angle of vision from a different perspective. It's the same perspective, but just a different bit of an angle of perception here that the Lord is refining. He's like, I'm done doing ABCs. Now we're going to a little bit of PhD. We're going to really talk as if it's on a level that you understand already.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes, true.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to add to this, I was thinking this Brahman conception is, I was remembering that shloka, Vidya Vinay Sampanne Brahmane Kavi Hastani Suni Chavacha Pakisa Pandita Samadarshina. So I was thinking Pandita or Brahman conception this is what we are taking. Somebody who's wise and knowledgeable, sees everything the same, whether it is cow, the dog eater. I'm thinking from, is it what we are saying here, or this is something different?
It's the same. It's a spiritual vision that is being talked about here. Prabhupada says in the purport, right? Where was it? When one can see this, he attains spiritual vision, thus being freed from differentiation, like man, animal, big, low, etc. One becomes purified in his consciousness and able to develop Krishna consciousness in his spiritual identity. So he's saying he attains spiritual vision. So the Brahman conception is a spiritual vision.
Yes, so the same what we discussed in chapter 5, right?
Same. The 518. Yes, the same verse. Yes, the same vision. Yeah.
And Prabhuji, in that verse that you were mentioning, right? Chapter 3, right? Prakriti Kriyamanani Guna.
328. Yeah.
So in that, what I remember was Prabhu. Yeah, as you mentioned, right? Soul, because of the false ego, thinks that he's the doer, right? But actually, the doer is the three modes of material nature, right?
Yeah.
Now we are talking about that, right? But in the verse that we discussed, it does not talk about the gunas. It just talks about the material nature.
Yeah. Yes, because here the purpose, Krishna is not yet expanding. That's the next chapter, material modes of nature. There Krishna will expand the modes. Here he's just giving an overview, and he's giving it more from a vision perspective, vision of a transcendentalist. So that's what he's highlighting here. Krishna is highlighting. There, when he was highlighting it from a perspective of a person who's being fooled by his ego, whose ahankar, whose ankahar is fooling him. Yes. So there Krishna was saying, you're a fool, you're looking at it this way, it's not you, it's just the material nature. Here Krishna is saying that a self-realized soul, he sees that material nature is the doer of things, not the soul. So even though it's the same kind of a talk, but they're kind of opposite, right? Krishna is there, he had a more chastising attitude,
Yes.
Here is a more vision of a self-realized soul kind of an attitude. That's the difference between both of the verses.
Got it. Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. So yeah, so here Krishna is talking about the person who's enlightened, and he can see things properly, and then he can see the material nature as the doer. Which verse was that? Fifth, right? That Smarshanam, Dharanam, Rashanam, Evacha, I forgot the verse. 5.8 and 9, fifth chapter, 8 and 9 verse. There are so many activities listed: closing eyes, opening eyes, hearing, listening, so much. Everything he sees it as that. Okay, it's not me. It's just this material nature working of itself.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have one question. Like we like by going through the Bhagavad Gita, we came to know that the soul is the one which is illuminating the whole body. So when the soul leaves the body, has without consciousness, the body becomes a dead body. Those things we can observe in the plants, trees, birds, beasts, animals, and human beings. In that way, we can understand the material aspect of the body and the spiritual aspect of the soul. Similarly, how can we understand the super soul? Theoretically, we know when the the soul cannot leave the body on its own unless the person is a yogi, has full control over everything. That we have studied in 8th chapter. But if I'm not a yogi, I am a devotee. I know that the super soul is the parent kind of thing, and who instruct what is right, what is wrong, that part. But is there any physical way we can also understand the existence of super soul?
Yes, Madhuri, there is. Prabhupada gives this in the verse I've quite often quoted here, 2:35. Let me show you that verse. Give me 1 second. There, Prabhupada very clearly delineates for us how we can know of the super soul. 2:35. This is the verse. So this verse says, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. And here, it's a long purport, you can read it, but I'll show you where the exact process is. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for the common man. The procedure is as follows. Prabhupada gives a full procedure on how to identify the Paramatma, how to identify the super soul. So you can read this, Mati. It's a long purport. I will not go through it. And,
sure, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
More than happy to answer if you have any questions. So there are, and this is just my thought, I'm sure there are more there, but two verses that are very, I really love when I read about the super soul is 2:35 and 7:14:38. I always tell everybody that. I just love those two verses, 7:14:38. These two verses, this Prabhupada in the purport gives a beautiful understanding of the concept of super soul. And this verse also is very valuable. So yeah, Madhi, please read these two. It'll give you good information. And if you have any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer if I know the answers.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
You're welcome.
7:14:38. Yeah.
And 2:35. It's 2:35 where Prabhupada gives a very good step-by-step way how to understand that there is Paramatma sitting in my heart.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, we did 31. Let's go to 32. There are 35 verses in this chapter. We'll wrap this up. this is 30 or 32, yes. Those with the vision of eternity can see that the imperishable soul is transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. Despite contact with the material body, O Arjun, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. So this is another good way of putting it. What Krishna is saying, that he's calling us Anadi. The word that is used here is Anadi, Anaditwan. So Anadi means no beginning. And then it is Nirgunatvat. There is no guna, no material modes affecting us. So beyond time and beyond modes, the emphasis that we skill is about transcendental. So yeah, so the soul is not entangled. That's what Krishna is saying. And that person doesn't get, the soul does anything, nor is the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. So that will be explained in the next verse, how it is not entangled. But this is again a vision of a transcendentalist, that he or she sees the soul as transcendental, eternal, and beyond the modes of nature. So that will something be explained. I really like the one thing Prabhupada put in here is that by nature he is full of bliss. So by nature we all are happy. There is natural happiness that we all have. But when we go out looking in the material world, all I get is stimulation. There is no happiness. There's some stimulation here and there, but there's no happiness. So the natural happiness only comes when I connect with my spiritual nature. Then only, so then this true full of bliss comes into action. Till then, I'm not in bliss. All I'm trying to do is reduce my miseries. And some days, if my misery is less, it seems as if I'm happy. But that's not the happiness. The happiness is, the bliss is natural. Then by nature, we all are happy. Happy.
So, Haribo.
Haribo.
Okay, so you you have to open that can of worms. Well, this is amazing. I mean, what are we? So then, what am I doing? Where if I'm Satchidananda, eternality, knowledge, and bliss, that bliss that I really am, who I really am, you brought it up again. Here I am. That's who I am. That's who I am. Okay, yeah. So the only way I can see is that, I have confusion. I have a misconception. So Kirtaniya Sadahari, I mean, somehow I have to get to the level of keeping that continuity of that energy. I have to keep that position, not, like you say, fleeting moments of bliss, that we get from reading the Bhagavad Gita or whatever happens in our spiritual journey. Sometimes we get that mercy, that bliss of identity. So there has to be certain time that I'm going to, before I change the body, that I hopefully can be full of bliss all the time. Is that a reality, or is that just it's going to be happen when I get rid of this body?
So you're saying that can we be Satchidanand in this body itself? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So this body is not Satchidanand, but I can be Satchidanand in this body.
That's what I mean. The consciousness that I need to have awake. I don't care about the body as much as, but the body, is a source of my, is the burden that I'm going through. But like you say, when you're trucking around in the body, you don't get that stimulation. Yeah. It's not the level of where I'm coming from. So, I mean, that's like this is like an existence of a kanista.
Yeah.
I need to get that higher vision.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, as souls, we are eternal, we are conscious, we are blissful, we are Satchidanand. And what we desire is pleasure. So desire is not the problem. The problem is misdirected desire that I have started to get involved in. I am originally meant to find pleasure by lovingly connect with Krishna. But then instead of connecting with Krishna, I'm trying to connect with this material world, worldly things. Okay? And that's where the Satchidanand messes up. Right? So the only lasting solution to unhealthy desires is the purification. Right? And the purification, where does that come from? It comes from reading Shastras, because our intelligence gets fortified by chanting. All these activities that Prabhupada has given us, they are very practical measures to purify ourselves. Until the time we are not purified, we allow ourselves some regulated gratification. So there's always some regulated gratification. We all are grastas. So grastas are allowed some regulated gratifications. But then critical for our purification is that we don't obsess over them. But focus is on Krishna. We have some gratification here and there, but the focus is on Krishna. So that purifies. That's when the purification happens. But yes, by soul, as soul, we are Satchidanand.
I mean, the amazing thing is at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says in the sentence at the end of the Gita, he says something like, yeah, you finally realize, you come to the point that you're eternal pleasure source of Krishna.
Yeah, the eternal pleasure source.
And so by the mercy of Radharani and Rupa Goswami, we can align ourselves properly in a position. But that point, is what we're evolving back to somehow by the mercy of this whole process of Krishna consciousness. This to come to that point that because the one became the many for his happiness. So just like when he separated himself eternally as Radharani for happiness, and definitive, understanding of us in reference to that program, we're the same thing. We're just a minute particle of his pleasure. We're just a minute particle. The one became the many. So if you align yourself with that position as a one that's eternally subordinate to his pleasure, I mean, it's that beautiful. It's that wonderful. And Prabhupada set that up for everyone. So every now and then, like he just did, he threw us a little bit of nectar when he just said that sentence. Everyone is naturally blissful. Yeah, and you can capture that and grasp it if you're trying to be transcendental, which we are right now. We're being transcendental with our perspective, our thoughts, and our understanding from the Gita. And so when Prabhupada says that, it's also perceived from the transcendental perspective. You're always blissful. So
Yes,
it's
always blissful.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. There was a hand raised, which was that Achyut Radhe Mataji. Yes,
Yeah,
you were
Hare
saying.
Krishna Prabhu. I have a question regarding that purport, which says that the soul is Anandamayi, that we know is all bliss in eternal. And at the same time, it's also written that it does not engage into any material activities, and it is not kind of entangled. So how is that since, at soul level, we are doing nothing. At soul level, we are not even engaged. Then why do we have to suffer still after the death? Because we become again the soul form. And then we have to be born again, taking a body, and then again and again do the suffer the reactions of the actions. Whereas we know that the soul is not at all engaged into it. Then how is that we have to still take up the reactions of all our deeds that may have been performed in one life or past lives or whatever it is?
So your question is that even though the soul is not being engaged, but still it has to suffer the reactions of the body?
Yeah, it has to suffer for the deeds that is performed in particular incarnation, that a soul takes place, because it's aloof. It's not really involved. And yet it has to take birth again and suffer the reactions of the past sins. Why is that so?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but let me try to see if I understood, and I'll try to give you an answer. So when he says he does not engage himself in any material activities, yes, the soul does not engage in any material activities, right? Just like I'll give you an example. A thief steals, he gets arrested by the police and gets punishment by the judge. Similarly, soul is the desirer, like the thief. Super soul, the sanctioner, we read that. Upadrashta-anumantacha. Judge, like the judge. And the material nature is the executioner, like the police. Okay. But the desire is coming from the soul. And now, why is the desire coming from the soul? You can question that. That was in the third chapter. I think the second last verse. Indriyani parani ahur indebhya paramana manasastu parabuddhi yubuddhi parasasusaha. Yes, so the Prabhupada, Krishna gives this hierarchy. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So the real hierarchy is that the soul should control the intelligence should guide the mind, and the mind should control the senses, and everything should work perfectly aligned with our true nature. Unfortunately, the whole thing has been reversed. The senses, the mind, because it's being deluded, it gets attracted to the sense objects. It tells the intelligence, because our intelligence is now very weak, because we have not fortified it by reading the right knowledge and giving it the right knowledge, it's very weak. So the mind can tell the intelligence, hey, this is what we want actually. And then the intelligence tells the soul that this is what we want. And the soul, being bewildered by the mind, starts desiring that. So that's how the degradation by the mind happens. So physically, the soul is not doing anything. But this desire is coming from the soul. And why is that desire coming from the soul? Is because of the negative impression that the mind has put on, or the improper use of the senses, mind, and intelligence. And I'm not sure if I answered your question, or if that was your question.
Yeah, I think so, because now I understand. My understanding is everything stems from the desire itself. So if we didn't have that desire, possibly there wouldn't be repeated birth and death. Is that correct, Prabhuji?
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. If we are able to, and it's not even like we don't have desires. If the desires are fully aligned with our nature, then there is no misery. So as you mentioned, right, what am I actually looking for? Happiness. My whole life is revolving around happiness. I work hard at work. Then I have my family. All that. Eventually, the goal is to be happy. But then, unfortunately, I'm looking for that happiness. My desires are externally focused in this material world. But the happiness is not there. Therefore, I keep looking. Therefore, I have so much variety. The reason we have a new Apple Watch every year is because people are not satisfied with it. They feel, oh no, this function is missing in it. Next year, Apple brings out that function. So that causes the cause of variety. So that's the way to understand it.
Yeah. That's a good way to understand it. So we have to work from the level of the desires, so that once we change our desires, so everything will fall in place, and the desire should be to align ourselves to the will of the God, right?
Yes.
That means the soul is kind of passive, and it's not really directing the mind that, hey, you have to do the service to the Lord, and then you will be happy, and you'll be able to bypass this whole incarnation thing one after the another. So is that right,
Yes.
Prabhu?
Yes, that's right. That's a good way
So
of putting
it's we have to start at the level of that, where when the desire comes at that very moment, we have to direct the mind not mind really, the intelligence, and then intelligence is then going to direct the mind, and then mind is then going to direct the senses, and so on.
Yeah, and then the senses will interact with the sense objects, but in a way that is truly in our nature, the way we are supposed to do it.
Yeah,
Yes,
got it.
yeah.
Thank you. I really
Yeah.
understand it now. Thank you.
And even before that happens, Rupa Goswami says this in the preface to the Nectar of Instruction. In the preface to the Nectar of Instruction, he says that we have to first come to the mode of goodness, and then things become clear for us. So we all, as Vedi Bhakti, we practitioners of this devotional service, what we all are trying to do is come to a mode of goodness. Right now, I'm in a mode of ignorance, sometimes passion, sometimes. A time will come when I'll be in a mode of goodness, and then everything will become clear for me. What should I do? What is right, wrong? What actions to take? What not to take? The weakness of heart will go away, and then eventually, my then the next step, when I will reach that state of happiness, then it will follow that state.
Yeah, quite a thing. But yes, if you can direct that, to develop the mode of goodness, if you have any suggestion of any para or any stanza wherein we can, or the purport we can look for.
So how to develop mode of goodness? Well, the chapter 14, 17, and a part of 18 also, Krishna will tell us about so many things which are in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance.
Okay.
He will very clearly tell us which food to eat, where to give charity, how to do austerity, how to do pen. He'll give all those details.
Okay.
And somewhere I have a compilation of all of them. I'll share that with all of you. So that's very practically delineated by Krishna.
Because we should work for achieving, that should be our goal, and we should work hard to achieve that goal, actually. So I was kind of curious, so that I can look up and try it on me. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's go on to 33. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything, although it is all-pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, though situated in that body. So here Krishna is using an analogy of the sky, that just like the sky is not mixing, does not mix with anything. So similarly, the soul is situated in different bodies, elephant, child, dog, whatever it may be, but it is not affected. It is transcendental in nature. So it's not entangled. Right? So it's the just as the sky, being subtle, is unaffected by grosser things it comes in contact with, we can also stay unaffected amidst all the worldly things we are doing, if we are cognizant of our transcendental identity. So keeping that in mind, that, oh, I'm not a body, I'm a soul, then all our activities will not get entangled in that. Right? So that's the essence of this verse. Right? When we are in a spiritual mindset, we can observe things from a non-detached perspective, or non-threatened perspective, from a detached perspective. And we can respond to problems correctly. That we don't mix with anything. Yeah, there are different bodies and so forth. Prabhupada gives, right? The air enters so many places. Still, the air does not mix with anything. Similarly, all of us also don't mix with anything. 34. O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity. One within the body illuminates the entire body by consciousness. Okay. So now Krishna is giving the analogy of the sun illuminating the whole universe. As in the same way, the Paramatma, the one super soul, illuminates all individual souls. Okay. So, and even as an Atma also, I also illuminate this entire physical body, by consciousness. So the soul illumines the body with consciousness, just as sun illuminates the universe with its light. And Prabhupada is saying the consciousness is the proof of the presence of the soul. Because we are conscious, that means we are living.
Yes. Yes. Coming.
Without consciousness, we are dead matter. That's the dead matter. Right? Consciousness is not a product of the combination of matter. So Prabhupada is clearly telling us that it's because the soul is pervading this whole body that I'm active, that this body is moving. Once I move out of it, this body is dead matter. Okay, so last verse where the phrase Gyan Chakshu comes, which is the title for this subsection. Jnana Chakshusha. Those who see with eyes of knowledge and the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So yes, so Krishna is ending here by telling us that those with the spiritual eye of knowledge that can discriminate, right, between what is Kshetra, what is who's Kshetragya. So we can. So that's the vision that we all should have eventually. Right? So by reflection, by meditation, we can understand what the path to freedom is, path to freedom from this material existence is, and we can come out of this cycle of birth and death. And there's an interesting thing Prabhupada ends this chapter with. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. Again, coming to the essence, we need spiritual master. We need a mentor who, so somebody can ask you that, okay, oh, with the help of the spiritual, but my spiritual master is not available for me all time, right? So spiritual master is not just a person, but he's also a principle, right? He's an external representation of the Paramatma. It's like the Supreme Lord is guiding us from internally as Chaitya Guru, and then there is also physically a guru in a guru or a mentor, right? That's there, and yeah. So for all of us, our spiritual master, even if we are not initiated, our guru is our Prabhupada. So what we all are doing at this moment is we are understanding this chapter with the help of Prabhupada. If not for Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita is such a complex book, it's just beyond our understanding. So thanks to Prabhupada, we have a complete understanding of Bhagavad Gita, and then we are also contemplating and realizing it on a daily basis. Okay. Hi, Prabhupada.
Yeah, you said, and that's the point. Prabhupada's so humble. He says, the spiritual master. Yeah. But in reality, all the purports are the guiding light to the complexity of transcendental thinking. Yeah. So it has to be translated. It has to be illuminated, and it's just from another angle, many ways that the perspective is pounded into us with the proper reality. But the mind is the subtle energy of Krishna. And so by, taking shelter of Krishna and practicing determination, Krishna helps us overcome that so that we can concentrate and chant better and be better devotees. But yeah. I see the intelligence confuses me. What is the intelligence? Is that also considered a subtle form of Krishna?
So there are eight elements, right? We talked about in the 7th chapter. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kham mano buddhi revacha ahankara ityamte bin prakashastada. 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. You can see them, but then there are 3 subtle elements, which is kham, mano buddhi, and ahankar, mind, intelligence, and false ego. That's the subtle body that we have, but that's also material. So when we go back home, we will leave this physical body and also the subtle body. Well, in one sense, the subtle body will also go. We'll always obviously have intelligence and mind, but that will be spiritualized when we go to the spiritual world.
Okay, that's what I wanted. That was my question.
Yeah.
Because it seems I'm going to have to sometime, because Krishna says, I will be the intelligence, I will give the intelligence. A lot of times, so I kept thinking, well, yeah, well, Krishna's the intelligence, you know, all my activities. And, but when it becomes, when he says he's the intelligence, a lot of times I see it's when you need it the most for the answer to the real spiritualization or real perspective. He comes pouring in with that form of intelligence so that you can pull through wherever you're at or advance. So because I you know, I got confused the other day. I was reading about intelligence and that didn't seem like it was Krishna there, you know. So then I had to go hunting back for where, you know, intelligence is spoken again. And then I say, oh yeah, Krishna says, yeah, I am the intelligence. Then I say, okay, you're the intelligence. So sometimes it just seemed to be, I would get confused with this intelligence thing. But now I kept seeing the mind is that subtle form of Krishna, but also the intelligence, as you say, is as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
So then that makes it so much clearer, because then it has its position according to how you're acting or, you know, desiring. I mean, if you have a desire for transcendental, you have a desire for spiritual, the transcendental perspective, then that desire means that the intelligence will come for that position, and the mind will come to that position, you know. So that's, you know, that's really amazing. If, you know, because many years all I've done is fight the mind until I realized, you know, the way to fight the mind, show Krishna, I'm going to practice and stay determined and he'll help me, period. I can't do it, but I know how to do it indirectly to get his mercy. And it's the same thing with the intelligence too.
Yeah, same thing with intelligence. Yes. Right.
Yeah, I mean, Arjuna was tripping out on that in the 6th chapter, but no one's really tripped out on the intelligence. I guess because, well, I don't guess, but I'm seeing that the subtle matter has to be spiritualized, or it has to come to a point of transcendental, transformed to transcendental position so that we can utilize it properly as servants of eternal entities, you know, uncontaminated. So that all has to be, because like you say, it goes with us. Well, then it has to be transformed, because you're not taking no baggage with you. You know, you don't got that 35-pound suitcase to take with you when you go to the spiritual world. It's all going to be, you know, purified. Everything has to be totally linked to the proper perspective to exist in Goloka Vrindavan. So that intelligence is going to be there too then, but it's not going to be.
Yeah, it's not the material intelligence. No.
Right. Yes.
It's all spiritual.
Yes. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Any more thoughts? Anyone?